West Hospital, and of course the first roundabout there is the jam-packed. When you move to Langata Road upstairs, you'll find that beyond T-Mall towards the petrol station, the Shell petrol station, there's a lot of traffic building up. And of course, if you come towards Mombasa Road along Capital Center, there's a lot of traffic outward towards airport. And of course, Haile Selassie Avenue doesn't look good at all. And Landis Road is totally jam-packed. It's flowing onto Jogoo Road, but it's building up as you go towards General Warawingi Road. So the traffic doesn't look good in the city. Of course, when you move to Ring Road, there's a lot of traffic. Kileleshwa Ring Road, there's a lot of traffic. Then Esprit Road is not looking good at all. And Ngong Road up past Adams Arcade into Andy's Veterinary School up there is a lot of traffic. Then Mombasa Road towards past the airport is clear. And of course, if you're coming into Mpisha area, the road doesn't look bad at all. So if you're driving, please use alternative routes. Limuru Road is looking much better, and Thika Superhighway, the traffic has started building up, but it's not as bad. It picks up from St. Benedict Catholic Church up there. So that's the news from traffic. We move on with our conversation, and of course, I have the four gentlemen in the studio, and we are talking about the church. Now let's shift it a bit to South Sudan. Banagashie.
Yeah. Well, I would say that South Sudan is in many ways very disappointing. What is happening right now in South Sudan and what has happened since they got independence is that indeed nothing, for lack of a better term, seems to be working in South Sudan. And indeed that goes to the larger Sudan in itself. And that perhaps also is reflected in the larger Horn of Africa situation. So when you start from Somalia, when you go to Eritrea, when you go to Ethiopia, when you go to South Sudan, and then you move perhaps the other side of the DRC, and then you have Central Africa Republic. So really, it's a very, shall I say, very a turmoil, shall I say, societal issues, violence, and perhaps the most important for me and disappointing is a lack of leadership in all those areas, and specifically more South Sudan and Sudan. And I needed to make this, to elaborate a little further, that in anything that you're going to talk about South Sudan, remember its origin or its tentacles and reach goes beyond South Sudan. It goes to Sudan. It goes to Uganda. It goes to Kenya. And it goes to Ethiopia. But they are all intertwined and they are all interrelated. And the circumstances, political, social, cultural, economic, and even religious, for lack of a better term, they are all interlinked. And there's also a fallout in all this. So in South Sudan is a very depressing situation, as it were, right now. We are all waiting and praying that it doesn't really spiral even further out of control. Already it is. It's in what we call a frozen state in which you do not know what, which, who, when, where, what's going to happen to South Sudan in the next 1 week, in the next 2 years, in the next 1 month.
When you say you don't know what will happen to South Sudan,
yes.
There's always been a peace accord which is here in Mombasa Road. Is it Panari or where do they have that peace process going on every year? I see the generals of South Sudan there. Are you trying to say, and maybe Dr. that this thing will never work?
You see, there are two ways you can look at that situation. The first one is the overly pessimistic view that my colleague has given. The other one will be some level of optimism in the midst of that pessimistic approach. Now, Sudan, the bigger Sudan, the way we know it, by bigger I mean when they were one. This is Sudan, this
the
vast...
older Sudan, say the
yeah,
older
the older
Sudan.
Sudan, this vast land where the desert meets the Nile. Has been historically a theater of many happenings, a crucible of cultures, paradox of what Africa really is, sometimes peaceful, sometimes chaotic. The combination of all those forces is what gives us what we call Sudan today. But I could be much more optimistic that as a historian, if you look at things over time, you realize that there is something that can be done, or it's not lost. South Sudan comes to being those tall, elegant guys. At least they have a semblance of independence in their own country, and they are not overly beholden to the north as they once used to be. For me, that is a step forward. Then, secondly, what is happening in South Sudan is not out of the ordinary of what has happened in many African countries in the first decade of independence. Just look at it, from Nigeria to Ghana, to even Kenya itself. In fact, an American political scientist, Emmanuel Wallenstein, said many years back that the first decade of independence is characterized by, on one side, chaos, on the other side, semblance of peace and a mixture of the two. And any country in Africa that survives that first decade of independence, it will enjoy relative peace, in subsequent decades. Kenya is one of such examples. So Sudan is not going through something that is out of the ordinary of what many African countries went through in the first 10 years when they were free. Ethnic polarization. Look at our own Kenya. Look at Nigeria, the divide between the north and the south. The struggle among elites for the control of the power and the resources of the country. That's not very odd. Which culminated in the 2013 civil strife, the conflicts between the two key personalities in South Sudan, Machar and Salva Kiir. And from there we have seen subsequent efforts in trying to restore some semblance of peace in this great land of South Sudan. So there is hope. That's simply what I'm saying. I will want to approach it from an overly optimistic point of view, just to complement the pessimistic view that my colleague has given.
But there's something. There's a statement I always say.
Yes.
That the Nilotic people are very chaotic.
I would rather not even go there, because I think now that you'll be getting into what we call profiling.
Yeah, I think profiling.
And I'm not so sure that your profiling is whether it's based on scientific or...
No, but wherever the Nilotics are, there's always the two borders. And I take
brother, I would be hesitant to get into that.
The same could be said of the Bantu speaking.
No, the Bantus are very docile.
Not necessarily. If I tell you the exploits of the Zulu speaking and the Ngoni speaking people of Eastern Africa, you'll probably change your mind on that.
Oh, the Bantus?
Yes.
I mean, I think the Nilotic people are very...
the risk of profiling a group of people is much higher if we went with that statement, but it does not stand a simple historical scrutiny.
Invariably, I would say this, and I think I'm a little hesitant and I'm a little cautious now.
Yeah.
That when we get into the area of saying that the Nilotes
are very chaotic.
They are not. I would.
It is not the Nilotes who were in Rwanda.
Precisely.
Those are Bantu speakers. It's not the Nilotes who are in Congo.
Yes.
So let's not run into the risk of profiling a group.
All right.
And I would rather, and I'm a little...
If I may just jump in a bit.
Yes.
And I think it is a problem that we can actually resolve, because the issue of the birth of that country itself should be a moment of pride as a country for us, because I think you have watched that documentary that we just produced recently, Charles, about the birth of this nation, and the success of that in itself gives us hope as a nation in the region. We as Kenyans, that is, if we could just put our house in order, of course we can be able to actually assist this nation that we founded or we birthed, we assisted. And these two gentlemen you're seeing here actually are the ones that I worked with. I interviewed them. There is one who is missing. It's called Lazaro Sumbeyo. He's the Lieutenant General who was the lead negotiator in that peace process that gave birth to this. But I do concur with John, and actually when our video editor was watching this video, by the way, John, he thought that you were traumatized by the experiences you had in that country, the violence that preceded the formation of the country, and the fact that this country actually is existing is all thanks to us as Kenyans, because it is a nation that we actually helped to nurture and to grow to what it is right now. So I feel like the best way to understand and maybe resolve the issues that are afflicting this nation is to understand the historical justifications behind them. And the people are better placed. I think, Charles, maybe if you just listen to John here, I don't know, is it true that you are traumatized by that? And what are actually some of the worst experiences that you saw beyond what was described in that documentary? Because it actually left my stomach churning.
Yes.
I don't know. It was quite chaotic, and it was resolved. So there's hope.
I would say this. When you come head on, right, it's not an academic exercise. You know what I'm trying to say? When you come in head on after a bomb raid and a market has been destroyed and you are there and a hospital has been attacked and patients are being rushed out because there are bombs falling, it's not an academic exercise, right? You're seeing it, and you're seeing people shot and dead and dying and running. Now, is that the first time I've seen it? No, not necessarily. I saw it many times.
Did it traumatize you?
I would say I got very emotional about it, because when I remember is the pain that you see. And I'll perhaps try to give you a good example, or rather the way I would want to summarize it. Sudan, whichever one you want to look at. There are 4 men, right? Now just want to give you an example. 4 male or 4 female. One is a grandfather, a father, his son, and his great grandson. I'm talking about 4 generations. That is, you're talking about 75 years. The only thing that they have in common is that they've gone through violence, extreme violence. From 1955 to 2025, the thing that is constant for these 4
is violence.
Is violence.
So you're telling us if...
and I'm trying, what am I trying to say? The level, what caused that violence, how they survived it, what they do, the thing that is common, is that when they meet and when they talk about how did you manage, How did you survive? And see, now, what I'm saying, was I traumatized? Possibly. But I am saying is that until and unless the issues that led and continue to lead to that violence, and the violence in South Sudan or in Sudan is not the ethnic clashes you talk about here. It's not. The nearest that you could see is in Somalia. And I've been to Somalia. I've been to Iran. I've been to Afghanistan. But I'm talking about the extent and the intensity and the spread of it. Now, in Iran, it was a period of time. In Somalia, it's been there for the last 30 years. Until when I was cutting my teeth in journalism. Somalia is what you've seen. It kind of fluctuates here and there. In South Sudan, it started in 1955. There was a rebate in
65?
1972.
Yeah, when Joseph Lagu joined.
Joseph Lagu joined in 1962.
Yes, but the respite.
The Addis Ababa Accord of 1972.
Yes.
The one that ended the Anyanya rebellion.
The Anyanya rebellion.
Anyanya too.
And there was Anyanya 1.
And Anyanya 2.
Anyanya 2.
Yes.
So what I am saying is that when you're talking about care, when you're talking about being traumatized and what have you, is that I have seen from 1996 when I was first in South Sudan, then in the Sudan, with the SPLM, with John Garang and the others, and we were attacked, and I've been through many of those attacks.
So if I may ask, sir, before we proceed,
you made a few issues there. You talked about Afghanistan, you talked about Iran.
What I'm saying is that I have seen violence.
Yeah.
I've been in the battlefront. I've been on the front line.
Yeah.
So, but what I'm trying to say is that there is a difference in the intensity and the personal of it. The civilians, the innocent civilians, and I'm not talking about the rebels and the guerrillas fighting, I'm talking about the impact, the immediate impact of innocent civilians when they are caught up in that.
So let me bring Daktari to it. Daktari, before I bring Bishop Muredi to it, is that what can we do to salvage South Sudan?
Good.
Well, I think your name is John?
Charles.
Charles. Yes, Charles. Thank you. Charles, you see, you can only get the answer of the question you are asking if you look at the whole situation historically. Because if you remember in the very beginning, I described this region as the crucible of civilization. An intersection of critical forces that give birth to binaries of violence and transformation at the same time over the years. In fact, long before the British took interest in this region, the region was made up of the ancient empires of Kush in Meroe, it's called Meroe,
Kingdom,
and Nubia, who constantly struggled with the ancient kingdom of Egypt. They control it, they control Egypt.
They controlled Kemet at one time.
Yes.
Yes.
Now, if you moved to the coming of Islam, things did not fundamentally change from this binary of violence and transformation. Islam comes to this region through two forces, trade and violence, and confrontation. So that binary continues until the rise of the famous Mahad revolt of 1885.
85, yeah.
Where a local sheikh raises up arms and takes control of the state and established what we call the Mahad state, which did not last for long because the British and the Egyptians come in and they create this mongrel, which we call historically a condominium, a dual rule shared between Egypt and
Sudan.
The Anglo-Egyptian
rule,
domination of the Sudan,
so
which begins in
the Egyptians and the British agreed to manage Sudan. Because the Sudanese cannot manage themselves, or
not necessarily. This was driven by the interests of the two nations, Egypt and Britain. Britain had already taken control of
Egypt
because of its interests in the Suez Canal, and then wanting to control the Nile, because the Nile was actually the mainstay of the Egyptian economy, and Egypt was the gateway to the east for the British, because the rest of the world had been occupied by really traders from the Middle East, and they couldn't give space to the British.
So this condominium thing that actually lasts for how many decades?
It lasts from 1898 to 1956 when it ends. It's about half a century, I suppose. And they purportedly now give Sudan independence. The independence really came with a number of things. One, advocated a flag, of course, very colorful, but then a flag in a divided nation. A nation that actually had obvious violence on its heels, because the first civil war begins almost immediately.
In 55, actually.
Even before.
Before.
It begins there. So it runs all the way to 2000 and 19 when the Anyanya to end and the sign agreements, and then now SPLM comes in under Garang, which runs for a long time, actually for about at some point we could say the Sudanese civil war was the longest civil war in the world.
And the deadliest,
I had the privilege of supervising my first MA after I just come back to the country with a Cambridge PhD. My first MA I supervised was actually on Sudan. So because of that, they gained the so-called independence, but they gained with chaos and the problems that came because of the way the British managed. There was this semblance that they were managing with Egypt, but basically it was the British managing Sudan, and they managed it in such a way that they nurtured the division that we talk about today. They patronized the North with a civilizing motive. Paternalism or control that was aimed at civilizing the North, but neglecting the South.
Yeah.
That is the divide that Sudan comes with to independence, and keeps on to nurture this long-drawn portrait of the Sudanese politics of violence and transformation. And that has not fundamentally changed. Even when the South was able to secede from the North, that motif actually continues. How best do we then solve that? The best way is, and history bears as testimony on that, is people have to talk, because they have talked over the years.
But they've been talking, Dr.
They have been talking, they experience a semblance of peace, and then it is very quickly replaced by violence, in tandem with that portrait that I give, which is very historical but touches in the time. The characteristics of the Sudanese history, colonialism, divisions, external pressure, those are the three key factors that affect the situations in Sudan, and they will continue to affect. So, to get out of this situation, then, you need to find a way to neo-colonial tendencies that find their way to Sudan. Because neo-colonialism is real. The internal divisions are real. And the external pressure, the interests of the big brothers in the international arena, they play in this. So finding a solution that will balance the three will give us some semblance of peace.
So if I may ask, before Charles comes in, these deep-seated issues that had been unresolved for almost, if not over a century, running into the independence of the country in 1955, is it 56? Actually, it's 55 when the conflict began, the Anyanya one.
And the British ran out very quickly, so that they will not be caught.
They leave it.
And they hand over a country in chaos.
And now, of course, as they continue having these conflicts between the North and the South, the North itself is in turmoil. Of course, we had coups before that. And Ali Mahdi, the then Prime Minister, was one of the most chaotic leaders, if you really ask me. These are the things that now Kenya comes in and tries to resolve. And I think it wasn't very easy for Lieutenant General Sumbeyu. It must, actually, speaking to him, he really went through a lot. And I think the fact that Kenya was trusted to resolve this must really have been a moment of, I think, is it desperation, or is it like, for lack of a better choice, maybe the fact that only Kenya was available? These issues definitely had to impact on the country's post-independence history, come what may. But I think you can just imagine what Sumbeyu was dealing with and how tough it was. And especially dealing with this guy who took over power in 1989, very difficult guy that John Gashi described in a very interesting terms. I don't know. he had a character somewhere.
Alex, Kenya did not have a choice in midwifing the birth of South Sudan. In 1993, when we get into this conflict through IGAD, the country was chairing IGAD, and in 1993 they are asked to mediate, between the warring parties in the north and south of Sudan. We didn't have a choice. We are dealing with a conflict that had gone on between 1983. Up to 1993, when active efforts are being made. 2 million people had lost their lives. Millions had been displaced. And those millions ended up here in Kenya, in Uganda, and a few to
Ethiopia. Yes.
But we bore the brunt of Sudanese refugees here, in Kakuma, in our towns. Up to now, we still have Sudanese family here in Kayole, in Kawangware, and the rest. In fact, just 2 years back, I supervised a student who wrote an MA thesis on the evolving relations among the different Sudanese social groups in the eastlands of Nairobi.
It's very complex.
It's very, very, very complex.
It's very complex.
So Kenya became a host of a sea of humanity from South Sudan. Kakuma camp in Kenya's northwest, became a strong dynamic where rebels were organizing to attack Sudan. So Kenya had to intervene. And at the time, the then president had no choice than to fall to the hands of a soldier to do that. With a military background, General Lazarus Zombeyo actually approached this conflict with a soldierly discipline, but I should say, because Bishop is here, spiritual patience.
Actually, he said that because when the president approached him, the then president, that is, he told him that, I know you are a good Christian, and that's why I'm bestowing you with this responsibility.
And you could see that patience
yes.
in this great soldier of this republic. And for once, he forgot that he was a man of the sword. And for one reason or the other, he became one of the greatest diplomats that the country has produced.
So I wanted to bring something onto... When you're talking about, you talked about religion, which was fundamental in the divide. Remember when you're talking about the Al-Mahdi,
yes,
religion has been key, apart from the political force in Sudan. Because when the Arabs started coming and the shift from, of course, Nubia to Kush to Meroe, it was religious fights throughout history. And now when the Muslim North was subjugating the South, Christian South. And you can see even the Christian South is highly divided. If you go to the Shiluks, most of them are Catholics. If you come to the Nuers, 90% of Nuers are PCA. The church is divided in Sudan. If you come to the Dinkas, 90% of Dinkas are other religions.
I'm hoping that perhaps.
And Bishop is here.
I'm hoping
the politics of church in a new society.
I think it's religion, actually.
Religion, through the history of Sudan, whether you're talking about Greater Sudan,
yes,
or South Sudan and North Sudan today, it has been characterized by this dual portrait, a binary of being an asset and a liability at the same time. Over the years, I said earlier here that Islam reached Sudan through two forces, conquest and trade. So it didn't come peacefully preaching. No, you change. And the sultanates that ruled this region, one on the west and the other one on what we call the east of Sudan now, religion came by the sword. Okay. But now, over the years, it's been an asset. Because if you look at, for example, the Sudanese Christian Council, that played a very important role in really navigating the complex social setup that nurtured the conflicts and the differences, some of them ethnic, some of them class, the church has played a very important role in providing forums where people can sit and talk together. And this is a characteristic over the years. Depending on how you look at it, religion is an asset.
No, Prof.
And in other aspects, is for want of a better term, I hope I won't offend anybody, is a terrible liability.
No, I think, Prof, there is another issue that I think people tend to forget, where this religion was used, as you said, as a conquest, especially to the south. Where there is that notion of Arabization. Arabization was actually aimed to be achieved through that Islamization. And the post-independent Sudan, before now they broke into two, was characterized by this kind of Arabization of the South, which was actually basically a religious indoctrination by force, Islamization. And one of the figures that John Gashie actually described as a zealot, as a religious zealot, Rasputin, happened to be a man who was a very close ally to this man who later on, of course, he was part of the, reluctantly was part of the birth of this South Sudan. That's, I'm talking about al-Bashir himself. And I think, John, you met the two. Al-Turabi.
Yes.
You also happened to meet actually Riek Machar, and I think you met Al-Bashir and John Garang. I just wish you could just describe how you found these people again, for us to just know. When you said that he was a Rasputin.
Maybe before John comes in, let me make this input to make things a bit more clear, Alex. You see, religion spreads through culture. In all cases where proselytization or evangelizing people has happened, it is mediated through culture. It is historians who now come to label one Arabization. We can talk about, in our case, Anglicanization. We were Anglicized to be Christians. They were Arabanized to be Arabs. To be Muslims.
Okay.
So it's not very, very different. Today, all of us are seated here. You're called Alex. I'm called Kenneth. It's called John. It's called
Charles.
You're called who?
David.
All those names don't belong to our forebears. They are names that I arrived here via what?
The religion.
Religion. Are we Anglicized? We are the most Anglophile country in the continent of Africa. Anglophile meaning British inclined and British mannerism.
Best English
speakers.
speakers.
Dressed like a medieval monk with a tie knot. This is called the British royal knot.
Huh?
The one I've tied. It's a British royal knot. That's a religion for you. So Islam came via Arabanization, Christianity came via Anglicization. So it's the same and one thing. One could have come by the sword, the other one will come by the Bible and diplomacy.
And
but
again,
the end result is the same, because one, you will be called Muhammad, you will be called John. You will
And
be called
Alex.
Peter,
So John,
which is not your name. And I'm seated here, for example, talking to my own brothers, to my Kenyan nation, in a language that is neither mine nor theirs, our colonizers' language.
So you are the children of colonialism.
That is it. That is
So
it.
I
And
want
John
us to
here
go for a
makes-
short break because of time. When we come back, we'll come to a bit of religion and then we go back to South Sudan. Keep listening. Of course, it's Spice 94.4 as we continue with our discussions. Of course, DJ Champs in 1 and 2s, we go for news and also weather and road and traffic. Keep listening. Spice FM.
The Spice Drive, getting you where you need to be.